We live? Hello. Happy New Year. First week of January. Thanks very much for tuning in. If you haven't watched our channel before, this is actually our third year on the trot of doing our XP Property podcast, which we do weekly for business owners and property people trying to grow and resolve problems in business to achieve those results. And this year is even more prevalent than others. I've heard a lot of phrases of survive till 25, but we're here hopefully to make your survival be growth and successes and not just surviving. And a lot of it actually is structured around what you can be doing this year in 2025. So for context, Ben and I run multiple businesses in construction, service-based businesses and property development. And in these weekly episodes, we share the highs and lows and things that we've overcome to hopefully give you value so that you can apply those same rules to your businesses. And a jam-packed agenda today, and it's predominantly fostered around this year and what you can focus on. So over the next 12 months, have you sorted out, if you've watched our last episode, you might have looked at your goals for the year, but it's also built around what you should be thinking about for this year to make sure that it's more successful than others. So without further ado, we're going to be sort of diving in with business basics that you need to be adopting in 2025. We've had a lot of comments and follows and questions of people that are right at the sort of start of their journey around the basics of what they of business, and we wanted to share the sort of general basic things because we do go into quite a lot of detail in a lot of topics, and we wanted to make sure that we're covering off the basics from time to time. We're going to be talking about opportunities specifically in property in 2025. So these are strategies that we're going to be looking at and delivering with, and also ones that you could be looking at. We'll be talking about what you can expect from us as our group of companies in 2025. And what you could probably potentially be excited to see that we're doing, and even some things that you can partake in. Knowing when a deal isn't right and cutting your losses. This is a huge one, and it can be a very expensive exercise, either just sticking with the deal or not sticking with the deal. So we'll be sharing of how we analyze that. We'll be talking about Start and Scale Your Business in 2025 webinar. Ben and I are doing a webinar. So obviously this is just a live snapshot across the businesses, but that is specifically focusing around starting, growing and scaling a development company, and more details will be shared later. We'll be talking about top tools to stick to your property development budget. One thing is really difficult in property development, that's budgeting. And we've shared a stat on this show before that I think it's only 20% of development companies live to our age, and the biggest issue is cash flow. So if you can't budget, you're going to hit those problems too and be like the others. And then last but not least, before we go into Q&A, we'll be talking about high value task tracking and low value task tracking, which we talked about in the episode a few weeks ago, reviewing sort of Daniel Priestley's review on things. And I'll be sort of sharing why that is important, and as a reminder for you, because it's really prevalent in the goal space as well. With what you need to be achieving in 2025. We'll then be doing Q&A, and do ask questions as we go because it is live and it doesn't cost you anything to ask a question. So see if you can ask a question we can't answer. And that's it, I think. Ben, anything else to add?
No, good. No, welcome to the new year. Happy New Year, everyone. And looking forward to getting stuck in. Can't believe it's our third season, round the clock twice, which is mad. But I know there's been huge amounts of value that people have got from these episodes because people tell us, which is amazing. So that makes it all worth it, and look forward to continuing to add value to your businesses as well. So yeah, let's crack on.
Very good. Well, I put this one in. Ben probably doesn't know too much about what it's on about, but I've been away. I've been to America for Christmas and New Year with the wife, and as every time we go over to the States, we always do things around her business. And I always say to her, you should watch our episodes on Friday, because a lot of the stuff that I'm telling you, we talk about. And we talk about growing businesses. And I think because she's not in property, she probably thought, well, there's normally quite a lot of property stuff and it's difficult to capture all of the exciting things that we talk about business. But we are business owners for service-based businesses. So it's not just property that obviously we specialize in, but it's not just property that this is relevant for. I've got a friend who works in Amazon reselling, and he's absolutely smashing it at the moment. He's just done a £1 million quarter in revenue, which is huge. I've got a friend who works in catering, who watches our channel. So loads of people that are in just business and not property watch this channel, which is amazing. And thank you for the listeners that do that. And the reason I wanted to share this is for actual business people. that are tuning into our channel, and also my wife, so I can get to watch this back. What do you need to be doing in basic business stuff to be thinking about? You know, because when I was with my wife, I sort of said she's got a new sort of partnership going on with her meal prep company, and I was like, you need to make sure you have, you know, weekly team meetings. I think that's really important. And there's just so many things like that just we almost put in practice, or we learned off someone, but we forgot we learned off them. And we've now got this routinely business where we have certain things that we do at certain times throughout the week or month or year. And I just wanted to touch on that because, you know, you might be sitting there thinking, I'm in a job, I want to get out of work. What do you need to be thinking about when it comes to running and setting up a business from a basics perspective? And Ben might even have some other areas to add. So basic financial, we talked at 2 episodes about you know, your balance sheets, your cash flow forecast. 3-year cash flow forecast is ideal, which can sort of depict the investment you need when you start to break even, your gross profit, your net profit, and all of those really clear financials are really, really important to be running in any business. Obviously, once you're running, is then obviously the bookkeeping and managing that, but ensuring that you've got enough forecast to get to sort of progress. Clear goals and a business plan. I did a session with 2 of our boardroom members earlier today, and they were doing their strategy on a page, which is what we shared in last week's episode, which is series 2, episode 52, which is setting goals, and we call it strategy on a page, where you set an annual goal and how you need to get there quarterly and monthly. And in that session that I did with them earlier today, there's 2 business partners, and I said, you both need to go away and do your personal goals and then come back and do your business goals, because you might end up doing a business plan which doesn't reflect what you want to do from a personal perspective. That's really important. And also, which leads me on to the next point, the people in the business and the communication have to understand those goals and know how you want them to be delivered. And that is really, really imperative, not only recruiting them, but communicating the day-to-day. Which is then brings me on to the key point, which is team meetings. You know, how can you help them achieve those goals? How can you help them deliver on what we need to be doing from a monthly or a weekly basis? Because that, as a business owner, is your job to help drive that forward and give them the support that they need. And then sales, which is one of the most important ones. Without sales, you can have the most efficient business in the world, but if you haven't got something to sell, you can't necessarily pay for the efficiency of that company, the operations of that company. So in property, it's normally a deal or a project or a property, but in service-based businesses, that's sales, and you do need sales along the lines with your delivery and operations. Marketing, which is becoming even more prevalent now. It's like a seamless environment where you can post and freely as much as you want, and a really efficient way of getting out there. And personal branding is even ever so more important. And actually, you know, you look at some of the business owners today, and just because of personal brand, they can supersede, you know, industry experts. And like, you know, looking at, for an example, KSI and Logan Paul, they had nothing to do with the drink industry, and they've overtaken a lot of their competition purely just because of their profile with their Prime Energy drink. So marketing, think regularly and think of documenting it. It's really popular. Actually, I met a guy in Dubai who runs a landscaping company. You should go and check him out. His name's Ben Morrison, but his YouTube channel and his Instagram makes landscaping look really fun, and he's done a really good job of it, and he's got a really good following. Now he gets sponsored by, you know, tools and straps and machines and all sorts of stuff, but he does a really good job of making something that's quite boring really exciting. And so that's what I wanted to touch on marketing. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you can still do a good job of marketing yourself. 3 more to go, and then I'll let Ben chime in any that I've missed. Surround yourself with the right people. Time and time again, I see, you know, sort of set the businesses that are around for a few years just doing the same thing and you know, trying to be on the same sort of treadmill. But if you haven't got other people around you that are business owners that have done it before, I think it's really important to be surrounded yourself with people that are doing it there and then. I find that a lot of non-exec advisories is really good, but sometimes they might be more risk averse or not actually know where the market is and where the market's going. So a combination of those two is really, really important. I've talked on cash flow, but more on this point just to make sure that you are cash flowing continuously in your business and trying to focus on a cash flow positive business. And then last but not least, execution from me. So it's like a crash course. You know, this could be for a bakery or
so much in there. it's hard to it's probably hard to take it all in because there's so much stuff, but there's, like you say, a lot of things that we do out of almost kind of just standard practice, whereas actually somebody setting up a new business wouldn't necessarily think, oh, I must have regular team meetings. I need a profit and loss, a balance sheet, and a cash flow forecast, which is the sort of three fundamentals of basic financials. And we use Zero accounting, just for those that haven't tuned in and heard it before, but we use Zero accounting software, an amazing way of bookkeeping and a really clear interface that works really well for people that don't necessarily have a bookkeeping or accounting background. I don't have that background, but I find Zero really, really good from a user interface perspective. And I will be actually talking about in one of the later topics how we use Zero in our different processes to kind of keep track of our budgets and actuals. So stick around for that. But if you want more info on basic financials, then Josh Keegan runs the Ultimate FD podcast. It's something that I tune into pretty much every single week and have done for the last 2 years or however many weeks he's been running it. But so much gold in there in terms of how to run a financial, run a business via financials, which is absolutely how it should be worked. You shouldn't necessarily, I set up Aura really as a business that does architecture, not necessarily as an architectural business. And that's really how you should look at every single business that you set up. I don't have much more. I think there's some really key ones, and I think regular team meetings are so important, and especially with marketing, because marketing does change so often. And I find that weekly marketing meetings with my team, it always brings up ideas, like just that regular check-in, or are we doing this, or could we be doing that better, or tweak this or tweak that. It does need constant improvement. So definitely focus on your marketing, because you need to drive sales, like you suggested. So need marketing.
I think one of the main reasons I wanted to throw this in here is just because we're on the face of it all in property construction, architecture, surveying, blah blah blah. But for actual people that aren't in any of those sectors, or not even in the property sector whatsoever, hopefully there's a sort of tip of the iceberg. And then if you go and watch some of our other channels videos where we do deep dive on financials, deep dive on goals, like we did in the last episode, hopefully you can see that it's actually very applicable to any type of business.
Nice. And it's probably worth me saying now, because I was going to touch on it a little bit later, but for things that are coming in 2025, what we're actively trying to do is almost give you guys a catalogue of our live episodes. So we obviously do them every week. There's a lot of topics that we cover, but where I want to get our website to is having almost a filtering system. So if you want to understand more about business accounting, what we're going to be doing is hopefully using AI to transcript all of these videos, create chapters and topics of each video. And then essentially, if you typed in business accounting, for example, it will tell you that season 1, episode 5 had it, season 2, episode 3 had it. It basically breaks down all of the videos that contain the topic that you're after. So you've almost got like a Bible stroke catalogue of topics that we cover, because I imagine we've done over 100 episodes now, and everyone has a bit of something, because that's effectively how these podcasts work. So it'll be good to have a central database that people can go into, search, and then find a video on that topic. So watch this space. Cool. On to opportunities in property for 2025. And I can see some good headlines there. UK property will be a buyer's market in 2025. I mean, what do you think about that, Jack? It's probably true, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know, actually. I still think it is a fairly balanced like buyer seller's market in like what I would call commercial sites, a land, commercial building. There is enough competition out there. There is enough people sniffing around and buying it. We were part of a bidding process where we're actually quite high up in the numbers, but I think there's something like 20 bidders. So it's still quite competitive in that space. But as far as when you're talking about this stat, I believe it was probably from a major article at the Times or something like that. they're probably talking about actual housing, so the consumer housing market. So if you're selling your house to upsize, downsize, whatever it may be, which 100% is buyer's market. It's not a seller's market at the moment, and that is a combination of sensitivity around interest rates, also confidence in the market, disposable income, cost of living. Our utility bills have gone up 200% in 4 years. So wow. If your mortgage costs and your utility costs go up, you can afford a smaller house. Is essentially the way that works, and inflation's gone up. And then, a stat from CBRE is obviously demand for living affordable housing is increasing, and that's no surprise. I mean, we've all heard sentiment in the market, but I wanted to share this as just some areas that we're specifically focusing on to deliver in 2025. You might have heard the phrase like course junkie or strategy magpie, where you just don't know where to go with the market. Fundamentally, we have done and will be doing all of these consistently, but some of these are specifically, I think, a lot stronger than their potential competitors before. So, for an example, permitted development. One of the biggest headaches at the moment for anyone in property or development is planning. The planning process is diabolically slow. In actual fact, even permitted development can be diabolically slow, but it's not 2 years, it's 2 months too slow. So that is a great area of business to be in. As a guy who I actually spoke to over Christmas, who won Property Investor of the Year at the Property Investor Awards this year, and he works in land assembly, and he was just saying he's so put off by the delays in planning, he's considering not actually doing it anymore. And he's obviously won awards from doing this, and we're seeing exactly the same. And the more you can avoid permitted development, the better. The more you can avoid full planning, the better, because you've got more control of time at your end. Social housing, obviously we're in a Labour government, and social housing is just in, when you look at supply and demand, if you're in any other business model and you looked at supply and demand, that would typically be the area that you would focus your time on. And there is huge demand for social housing, and Labour government will support affordable housing. So it's definitely a space which will continue to grow in popularity. And, it's kind of like, if you don't do it now, you're probably going to join the party too late. These are not the only ones. Ben might have some more to add at the end. Assisted sales. Now, assisted sales, what keeps happening with the residential housing market is the government so the 3% second home housing surcharge that the Conservative government put in place was a temporary measure to put in place. That's now been up to 5% surcharge. So something that was temporary is now essentially, what's the actual stats on that? 40% more than it was, and it's gone up from 0 to 3% to 5%. So this actually supports assisted sales really well. So if you're buying a residential property, there's a huge cost associated to acquire that building and put it in your own ownership to deliver it. But if you can offset stamp duty by doing an assisted sale, which is where you get an agreed contract with the seller, you don't buy the building, you agree a lock-in land value. So let's say they're looking for 500 grand for you to buy it, and you can only make the numbers work at 400 grand. You agree to pay them 500, but from the sale proceeds, once you've joint ventured, you've brought the skills and expertise and funding to deliver the refurbishment, development, whatever it may be, sell the site at the tail end, deduct the value of the land that you locked in for the owner, deduct all of the costs to get there today, and hopefully the profit margin will be greater because you haven't had all the acquisition costs to get on the site. So I think that's a great opportunity at the moment if you can't get houses to stack as flips or developments, if the acquisition is a residential house. We've actually lost the screen share, Ben.
Yeah, no. Go on, carry on.
I can't remember what the next one was.
I was just going to say, we've 4 years ago, we did an explainer video on what an assisted sale was, because that was a strategy we were doing back then. And it was good then, and it's even better now, and it is going to be even more prevalent going forward because of these stamp duty changes. So if you do want to understand more about it, it's in our one of our playlists called Education, Become a Better Property Developer. That's what the thumbnail looks like, and it's called What is an Assisted Sale? So yeah, do head over there if you want to learn more detail about what an assisted sale is.
Very good, very good. Peter's asked a question as well, which we can come around to. So, with our aging population, have you looked at assisted living and care homes, or is this too far removed for focus on HMOs? I think assisted living and care homes is a great market and great market space to be in. Our social housing is kind of supported living, and aging assisted living is a huge market, and I think there's really good opportunity in that space. It is a very unique product. So, for an example, we could have a permitted development scheme that could be an assisted sale and social housing and a HMO all in one. So there's not much deviation of product change. So it's very easy for us to control what we're doing and put it into those different specific areas. Whereas typically for assisted living or care homes, it's purpose built, which is kind of fine if the demand's there. There's a site in Henley which has got a failed application for assisted living because there's too much assisted living in the area. So that it still carries risk, even though there's strong demand for it for an aging population. So I would actually say it's a great area to be in, especially if you're going to niche in that area. But for us at the moment, these other strategies fold way better into our existing delivery and our existing skill sets without having to completely start from scratch. And take additional risk when we're still growing, and that will probably be a nice to have as part of the portfolio one day. But that's what I would say. But I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I do think it already is massive, and it's only going to become even an even bigger part of the market, because we do, like you say, have a massively aging population, and I think things will change in terms of how that looks. Technology coming in and the aging population now being way more technologically advanced than they previously would have been. I think there's opportunity to kind of create a bit of a difference there in terms of a niche and a standard product that you produce. But it's definitely something on my radar for the future. Like Jack says, we're way too kind of busy and engrossed in what we're currently doing to kind of start venturing into that, because it is very specialist. But it is absolutely something that I want to be doing in the future.
Yeah, same. And then next point is HMOs. So as Peter alluded to, we do HMOs. I actually think, as buy-to-let's getting more difficult, doing HMOs and integrating your developments into like cluster HMOs is a great way to go to hold stock. It's super difficult to hold blocks of apartments now and make them worthwhile keeping, because the equity just sits there. It's getting a terrible return because of interest rates. And fundamentally, buy-to-lets are difficult to make work. I actually find it easier if you buy a buy-to-let and add value and do a refinance as a standalone. We've done a few of those in Central Suites, but as a block of development, let's just assume you make 25% return on GDV, which is a huge return after finance costs. That's a good place to be in. Then you refinance it on a 70% LTV mortgage. You've got to put money in, and it probably doesn't cash flow that well. And to put it in perspective, our £3.5 million development scheme, which won 2 awards, has £1.45 million worth of equity stuck in the deal. Next, a similar amount to what some of our higher performing HMOs, which are buy for 400 grand, spend 100 grand on them, and refinance as 700 grand. So the risk rewards, the cash flow, HMOs have always been strong. They don't work as well as they always did. I'm struggling to make 4 or 5 bed works. I struggle to make 4 beds work, and we used to be able to make 4 beds work all the time. 5 beds, there's a few that work, but definitely 6 bed plus is a little bit easier. So love HMOs. They're just strong for cash flow. You do the work once and you get paid every month for a very long period of time, rather than in developments you have to refind the deal, the investment, the bank, et cetera, et cetera. And last but not least, don't get distracted by everyone running and flying around for all these different strategies. Lean into your skills. Don't park your skills for something that you think is going to be hot and spicy, because in 3 years' time, it probably won't be hot and spicy. Lean into what you're good at. Have competitive advantage working in your favor. So for an example, directly at Peter's question, if you've coincidentally been a site manager on a care home, in a care home business, and delivered multiple care home businesses, great, you're even better fit in that space where we would be uneducated on what needs to be delivered, what the compliance looks like, etc. So lean into your skills, and ours is finding and designing value. They're typically our sort of 2 skill sets, and fortunately we can sort of get the best out of both of those in these particular areas. That's it from me. Any other opportunities, Ben?
No, I think that's really good breakdown. I mean, just for Todd listening, who's going to be piecing this together, these are the best opportunities in property for 2025. He asked me to make sure that we're doing some like leading questions for
nice.
for chopping it up. So that's for you, Todd. Cool. So what can you expect from us in 2025? Obviously, that's what we've talked about, some potential opportunities for you, some ways in which you can solidify your business, give your business the best foundations that you possibly can get. But we've got lots of exciting stuff in 2025. And as we've said in the last couple of weeks, by telling you guys that this is what you should expect, it holds us accountable, and it means that there's more incentive for us to want to try and push forward and do the things that we do set out to do. So we're putting it down on paper. We're telling you what you can expect to see from us, and it starts with pipelining. So Jack's got a couple of projects in the pipeline. We've had a really busy delivery period for 2024 and 2025 with delivering 65 units, and I'm going to be talking you through every single scheme at the end of this section. So stick around for that. But yeah, we're now pipelining for 2026. So if you have opportunities, if you have schemes that maybe you're struggling to unlock, or you need a different angle of viewpoint, we'd love to either come on board as a JV partner, help guide you in that respect, or potentially even buy it from you. So if you're a land agent or you've got opportunities that are in London or the home counties that have a GDV somewhere between 5 and 15 million, do reach out, because we'd love to start looking at our next purchases. We're going to be taking this whole section to the next level. So all of the XP kind of education that we provide a lot of information for free. You tune in every week, you get a huge amounts of value. But 2025, we will actually be bringing out a whole array of other types of ways in which you can learn from us. 2-day intensives, longer term sort of tutorials and education. So we would absolutely love to bring you on board for that. We can't wait to kind of pull the sort of syllabuses together and generate even more value for you guys. If you get all this information for free, imagine what we can do for your business if we're actually kind of sitting down with you on a more intimate kind of one-to-one consulting level and offering a syllabus of information to you to make your property a better property developer. So watch this space. If you have come to some of our previous site tours, thank you very much. We will be doing at least 2 new site tours in 2025. So hopefully in the description down below, there will be a link for you to click to register your interest for our next site tour. I think we had about 30 people on the last one. And at the end of this segment, you'll see some of the projects that we will be going and viewing. So if you want to book yourself in to our next site tour, make sure you click the link in the description to register your interest. We've had a lot of issues over the last 4 years with our social housing portfolio. We'd love to sell that. So if you are interested in some regular sort of government-backed income effectively through the social housing space, we've built a £20 million portfolio in South London. We have a registered provider on 10 and 25-year leases with generating that secure income. And we want to sell that portfolio to move on to bigger and better things. So if you know anyone that's looking to deploy that sort of capital, then let us know, and we would love to kind of have a chat about potentially selling that portfolio. I put this in there. Jack doesn't know I put it in there, but I hope he's going to be starting it because it's a very exciting project. But Jack's got planning approval to build his own house. So very grand designsy. It's called the Pond House. Where are you at with that at the moment?
So second round of planning, which is delayed for BNG, but I'm actually waiting for some tax advice still.
Nice.
But yeah, so should be submitting planning in the next couple of weeks, and then really hoping to start like very early Q2.
Nice.
But it's super cool. I was actually thinking to myself, I really need to record these when I move into that house, because it's the backdrop of the office. There's a bonsai tree with a waterfall behind it. So it will be good fun. So if you'd like to see, it's got a tree going through the house. So if you'd like to see more of that, stay tuned.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Cool. We've done a couple of successful networking events in Henley with XP surveys for architects and built environment specialists. We are going to continue to do that. We're hoping to host at least 3 of those. We've always had sort of 25 plus, 30 plus people come to those events. We want to make it bigger and better. We'd love to move to a new venue because we've run out of space in our current venue. So that really is, I think, by the end of 25, my target to get that event really pumping and making it an amazing sort of event for property professionals within Henley on Thames. So yeah, stay tuned for that one. And then we've got a lot of I think I spoke to Graham earlier. We've got 17 projects on site with Aura currently at the moment. Wow. Some of those are small and we won't really be documenting them, but others we absolutely will. And if you go over to our YouTube channel, you can see some of our previous site tours, some part finished, some completely finished. And we talk through the issues that come up on those projects, what our clients wanted. These are mainly kind of large home extensions where people are really transforming the way that they live. They look incredible. We found out that we've had over 250,000. That's 250,000 views on our YouTube channel. Now we've got over 3,500 subscribers, which is amazing, and that seems to be kind of snowballing. Which is awesome. And there's a funny bloopers video on there which has a lot of swearing from me on there, just for a bit of interest. But yeah, we're going to be bringing some more amazing home video tours in 2025. We've got a new build that's just started in southwest London, which is from a young couple who is effectively building a new 3-bedroom house on the side of their parents' house. Getting onto the property ladder in London is obviously really, really tough. So what they've been able to do is carve off the garden, get planning permission for a 3-bed, really funky house. It's a triangular shaped plot, so it's really, really quirky, really constrained. We went through some really interesting designs to get to where we have been, and they broke ground just before Christmas. So yeah, we will be on site in the next couple of weeks, showing you kind of the start of that project and what we hope to achieve, and then actually documenting it a little bit of grand design style as things progress through the build. Cool. And then more podcasts with other people. So we obviously do this podcast, we bring it to you every week, and we bring out further videos on YouTube on a weekly basis. We've done the odd video podcast with other people, but 2025 we really want to start ramping that up. So we've got a bit of a hit list, and I have put some people on this list. So if you know them and if you could intro us to them, that would be absolutely amazing. Obviously we'll be reaching out to them ourselves anyway, but this list isn't exhaustive, but we'd love to speak to Property by Kazi. We think he's doing a fantastic job with his home tours and all the property developers that he's interviewing. So we'd love to have a chat with him. Justin Wilkins, I've been following this guy from the very start. Started with, buy, refurbish, whatever that BRR stands for, I've forgotten already.
Refurbish, refinance.
That one,
pretty much it. Yeah.
That one, yeah. But he's now sort of looking around a lot of other property developers' projects and asking some really cool questions, and I love his video style. So yeah, would love to be on with Justin Wilkins. Same with Jack Smith. I've seen that he's just interviewed what's his
Jamie York.
Jamie York, sorry, yeah, Jamie York. His business is doing like £10 million a year, which is absolutely mad. So that was a really great insight into his business. So we'd love to do a sit down chat with Jack and sort of show him where we've come from, what we've been up to, and sort of connect with him. And then Joshua Tharby is, I think he now lives in Dubai. He is a tax advisor, so a little bit different. We've done a lot of property podcasts. We'd love to now sort of branch out and start looking at more financial, monetary sort of YouTube, accounting, finance, all that sort of stuff, because obviously there's a lot of people in that space that own property, want to be in property. And Joshua does a very, very good job of marketing himself. So yeah, we would love to have a chat with Joshua. So if anyone knows any of these people that is tuning in, yeah, do reach out and make an introduction if you can, because we want to get on their podcast. Cool. And then I said that I'd go through every project that we have in the pipeline, because we go through snippets of some of the projects almost every week, but never really in like a quick succession of these are the projects we're working on. This is a general overview. This is how many units it is. This is what the GDV is. So I thought I'd quickly run through that now, which should take less than sort of 5 minutes, but hopefully you find it interesting. So starting with Colney Hatch Lane, this is in Muswell Hill. This is a 9-unit scheme. You can see the CGIs on the left-hand side and the actual reality of what's happening on site at the moment. Massive basement that we're digging out. They've now, I think, removed about 1,000 ton of earth from this building, which is a ludicrous amount of soil. But the space that's now being created is awesome. They've done all the internal structural works. They've created the new loft extensions, the extensions to the rear and all that sort of stuff. So you can really start to see the shape of the properties being formed. And then this is the CGI. So very sort of neutral palette. It is our most expensive project. These should fetch somewhere between 800 and 900 pounds per square foot. So yeah, we've really got to get that finish right and that sales value kind of where it needs to be. So super exciting project. It's going to look incredible. And this will be potentially one of the site tours that we do this year. We've never done a site tour to it. So it'd be good to show people around. Then we've got Abingdon, which is our 23-unit scheme. When we bought the site, it had we got planning approval for 16 units. We soon increased that to 20 units. Then we went back in for even more enhanced planning. So we got 21-unit scheme as part of the conversion works, and then 2 extra new builds in the car park as well. So that's a 23-unit scheme. Former office, beautiful old malt house. You've got this cool turret at the rear, which we've actually added a couple of mezzanine levels in. So there's a big roof light on the top of here, which will actually be right above one of the bed decks of one of the HMOs that we'll be putting into this building. So yeah, super exciting. Works are due to complete in sort of June this year. And things are sort of trundling along, and we have done a couple of site tours to this project, and we'll certainly add it to the next site tour list because everyone absolutely loves walking around this property. It's really quirky, it's really cool. So yeah, looking forward to progressing with that one. Then we've got Tame, which is St Andrew's Court. First phase of this scheme is 9 units, which is now complete. We're just snagging those first 9 properties. You can see we've added these quirky mezz decks on the top floor flats. All the top 3 flats have sold out like hotcakes. I think it's no wonder why. I think they look absolutely incredible. These mezz decks are awesome for chilling out, for home working spaces. It feels so nice and bright and airy in these spaces. It's great. So we've got 5 of the first 9 under offer. We've exchanged on 1 of them. And all of them are hitting or achieving more than the target GDV that we expected. So yeah, absolutely chuffed with how those have turned out. But we still need to now get those final 4 sold in phase 1. Phase 2 is going to be starting in March. That's a further 11 flats. Again, very similar spec, very similar design. Not as quirky as the first phase, but still going to look incredible. So that'll be 20 flats. 6,500 square feet of commercial space, which we've retained on the site. And we are currently in appeal for 2 new houses in the car park as well. So all in all, when it's finished, hopefully 22 new homes and 6,500 square feet of commercial space, which we will retain as part of our property portfolio. Cool. Norwood, I would potentially describe this as like the runt of the litter. It's a project that we don't really want to build out, but sort of have to. It's an airspace scheme. We've got 2 new units going in at the top. It's an existing block of 9 flats, and we've bought the freehold and got planning approval for an extra 2 flats on the top of here. So that is something that we will start building out later this year.
Marlowe's probably worthwhile pointing out. It's only the runt because it's a bit small for us now.
Exactly,
it's not actually the margin. It's just a bit small for us now.
Yeah, exactly. The GDV is less than £1 million, and for the time and effort that we would need to now put into that project, it's not really worth it. But sometimes needs must, and that's where we're at. So Marlowe's an 8-unit scheme, former office conversion and dance studio conversion. That is due for completion in literally like 3 weeks' time. I need to go to site and see where they're at, but the show flat is due for completion on the 13th of January, and we've got the show furniture being delivered, ready for that. So it's looking great. Again, this sort of area in Marlowe should fetch £550 to £600 a square foot on average. We've got some studios, some 1 bed, some 2 beds, 1 large 3 bed, and we've done some quirky things with that project to kind of eke as much value out of it as possible. So that's always been on the list from a site visit perspective. So again, if you come on our site visits, register your interest below, and this will be one of the projects that we go to. This one we did a deep dive. I can't remember what the episode was, but we did a full deep dive on this project. It's called Churchill Way. It's the former doctor's surgery. It's going to be 5 flats and 14 bed HMO, and due for completion in sort of Feb, March this year. So this is one that, like Jack was talking about earlier, in terms of like cluster HMOs. So, you know, it's all in one place. All the management is in one place. It's 14 units, averaging probably £750 per room per month. So what's that? 14 times 750, about 10 grand a month. Best part of 120 grand a year in terms of rent roll. Yeah, we should get most of our money back out of that one on refinance.
Yeah, it's series 2, episode 4.
Nice one.
Deep dive.
Sweet. Cool. And then big question mark around this one, the bank. Oh, watch this space. We are in the process of buying a bank, and it should end up being 7 flats and a retail space at ground and basement level. So watch this space. We should be probably doing a bit of a dive into this soon, shouldn't we? Once we get it to a certain stage of purchase, we'll do a deep dive.
Yeah, it'll be this month, sure.
Cool. Sweet.
I was telling an American, they're like, how's work going, Jack? I was like, yeah, good. We got some projects going on. We're buying a bank, and they thought we were actually buying a bank. I was like, that sounds way cooler.
Yeah, that really does. Not quite there yet. I need a couple more zeros on the end of our revenue. Yeah. Cool. So that was it, really. Hope you enjoyed kind of, a whistle-stop tour of the projects that we're delivering. 65 units across those, actually 65 plus. I can't actually remember the exact amount, but it's around about 30 million in GDV. And we started most of those at the beginning of 2024. So most will be delivered by summer this year. A couple will sort of push slightly past that, but huge sales year for us. We really want to start seeing the property market kind of pick back up again in Q1, Q2 of next year, because there's a lot riding on that happening, and selling quickly, because like we said last week, finance costs really do smash into your profit. So we need to sell quickly, watch this space.
Very good. I don't think we've ever touched on this before, but I think it's quite a big sort of nugget, really, for anyone, is like knowing when a deal isn't right and cutting a loss, because sometimes we've delivered a site and thought probably should have offloaded this one and just walked away with the soft costs or the planning costs. So it's a very key one for you to think about, and it's very easy. The natural nature of an entrepreneur is to be optimistic. And you always have to take a very bland, conservative view on any business decision. And it's sometimes difficult because you don't realize that until the point of maybe almost no return. So I wanted to sort of share this to look at if you're bidding on something or you're taking something forward, and just to sort of sound check that it is right to take it on against its risk, time, delivery, cost, profitability, blah, 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 blah. And when is the right time to go, actually, no, let's not do this deal. And cut the loss. We've done a deal before where we did, quite a profitable deal on the face of it. Took a little bit longer than we had hoped. Made a measly, I think it was like 15, 20 grand. And in hindsight, we would probably have been better off not doing the deal, saving all the time that it took us, and focusing on other things. So how can you analyze when the right time to cut it off? So you've got your deal analyzer, you're bidding on something, you might have it in legals, you might be even have it exchanged or funded a bit of planning. And an easy way to sort of determine whether this is right for you, and ideally, if it's not right for you, if you can sell it on, that's ideal. But sort of scenario with me here. So what I'd like you to do is take your worst case profit. So your worst case profit is assuming most things go wrong. So your build overruns, your time overruns, and your gross development value is not the punchy or the optimistic value that you expect. And then analyze that against the risks. So for an example, if the risks are super low, it still might be worth taking that risk on that particular project. If the risks are quite high and the margin is not huge, that is probably a really big telltale sign that you need to offload and not take that project on. The next one we look at is not relevant to risk, but actually the time, because time is super important, and there's an opportunity cost for anyone delivering anything, and you could be focusing your time on other things. So we do worst case, profit, for an example, divided by the hours that you will take you to deliver it. And then you'll get a value per hour. Obviously, if that value per hour is something measly, then you don't want to necessarily take that forward. A good example I have for this is Ben and I bought a site. We went to planning for 2 houses. We thought we could get the 2 on appeal because they weren't that keen on it because of the tree root protection area. We did a backup planning application for 1 unit. We then sold it in an auction for a profit. And the profit wasn't huge, but when I actually worked out the profit per hour, it worked out to be a lot. It worked out to be multiple hundreds of pounds per hour that we actually devoted on that particular site, which wasn't a bad return. So that's an example of, like, if you actually value per hour and it works out well, then it might still be worth doing, obviously, once you've done the risk analysis. One thing that I haven't actually touched on here is, if there is no profit in a worst case scenario, definitely don't do the deal. Because it sounds too risky. But yeah, this is in a scenario where there is some profit if the worst happens. Point number 3 is the deal in line with your goals? Sometimes it's quite easy to get excited about a deal that it might be a completely different off tangent from a deal that you're used to or you specialize in, or that marries up with your goals. And what I mean by that is, I spoke to a developer not long ago who said they're probably not going to make any money on a development they're doing, but the other benefits that they get from it within their business, from a marketing perspective, connections perspective, their sort of reputation of being able to deliver a site that big. So if it's not in line with what you want to be doing, definitely reconsider whether that's right to be doing. And as Ben said earlier today with Beckton Court, profitable deal hits our metrics, but it's not really in line with our goals to be delivering the 5 to 15 million pound development. So the reason we're delivering it is because we've already bought it. But if you have the choice before then to take it further, then that's a decision to make. And then last but not least is the time risk against soft costs. We've actually got this with a deal that we're trying to buy at the moment. And I haven't currently got the confidence that all of the costs that we're going to be throwing at it to buy it is going to be within enough time that the seller's going to be comfortable with that. And what I'm getting at is, if you've got a difficult seller that's really astute on times, and that could be an auction, or it could be actually just a seller that says, I want it done in this date. So to give you an example, this current deal is they want an exchange done within 2 weeks, which is almost near impossible, especially if you're getting funding, because you've got the investors, the debt lenders, and all of these legals that have got to talk, including the seller's legals that have got to talk. And what we don't want to happen is the time risk of the soft costs. So you're funding might be 3,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 of soft costs, and then you get to a point where actually the seller pulls out because you've taken too long. So analyze the soft costs against that. And sometimes, if you're not comfortable doing all of this work within a 2-week time frame, or you don't have confidence that the seller is committed to the sale, it might be worth pulling out sooner rather than later. So they're like 4 areas that I would consider if we're actually analysing whether a deal's worthy to take forward. These are all on top of all of the other things, like, is there margin in the actual development? Do you know your build costs? Like, this is after you've de-risked everything and you're basically understanding the pipelining and the risk versus reward and cost analysis, because it is important. I had a phrase the other day, I can't remember who said it, but some of the best business owners are the best business owners because they are able to say no. And that's sometimes more important than saying yes to a deal.
Nice. Cool. If you're enjoying this conversation, we would love you to rate us on Spotify and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We've been getting some really, really great kind of DMs and testimonials recently about sort of people tuning in, how much value they're getting from it. We love that. It makes it worth it. So keep that coming, and do us a favor and just share it with one person. Like, if you do tune in to this regularly, if you do get value from it, share it with somebody on WhatsApp and just tell them they need to be listening in. We would absolutely love that so much. And if you really want to start and scale your property business in 2025, we have an exciting webinar that we are going to be doing next Monday, the 6th of January at 7:30 p.m. With Tyler Newman. We're going to be talking about how we've started and scaled our business, how we find profitable opportunities, how we've gone from basically zero to 80 million pounds worth of development in 6 years. Jack will be talking about finding, funding, structuring. I'll be talking about some of the top tips I learned at the Berkeley Group in terms of designing and optimizing schemes and how to sell quickly and all that sort of stuff. So if you're interested, there'll be a link down in the description for you to register for that webinar. Or if it's not there, DM us and we can send you a link to get signed up. We'd love to have you on the call. Cool. And then top tools to stick to your property development budget. Budgeting is very, very difficult. There's a lot of moving parts within the property development business. The delivery stage of things is where it can go all wrong from a cost perspective in terms of things escalating and spiraling out of control. So unless you have really good financial management, you're really going to come unstuck. And that's really what this topic is all about. So I've spent a good couple of days really over Christmas. That's how much fun I have. But when everyone else isn't working, which is actually a really great time over Christmas because everyone's doing their own thing, I can often get some really good head space to do things I've been putting off for a while. And this was one of those tasks. So I spoke about Xero accounting software earlier. It's a great system. And in Xero, as a sort of bookkeeping metric, you can set codings, and it's called the chart of accounts. Effectively, every sort of section and part of your business is coded to a certain cost allocation. And we have this at the moment where it's broken down to pre-purchase costs, purchase costs, planning consultants, that's consultants during the planning stage, planning, statutory fees, detailed design, construction, that's consultants working through the construction process, your main contractor under the construction element, client supply and specialist items under the construction section, statutory payments like SIL and things like that during the construction process, marketing, and then sales and finance and interest charges. That's how we break down our headings. But that really wasn't enough. It wasn't giving us the financial control that we wanted. So I've now spent a lot of time breaking into those headings and tagging and coding against every line item within our development appraisal software. So on the right-hand side, you can see our purchase costs come under the heading and coding B. Our purchase price will be a B01, stamp duty B02, acquisition and sourcing fees B03, purchase legal fees B04, and the list goes on. So let's look at planning, statutory planning, that has a coding of D. So our planning fees would be a D01, our council legal fees would be D03. Basically, everything has a line item so that going forward in Xero, before we start the project, we can then put a budget versus every single code that I've just mentioned. And then as we go through the project, we can see our actuals versus what we set out with on our budget. And this is just a really good way to make sure that everything is coded correctly. Every price and cost that you spend is allocated. And then when a project's finished, for example, you've got a really, really great way of looking at what was budgeted, what you actually spent, and why did you can then review and analyze why you actually spent what you did. So hopefully that's useful. I can share the coding breakdown that we use. If you drop a comment down below, let's call it templates, drop a comment, templates down below, and we can send through how we split out all of our different phases of the project, how we code against them, and how that might look in your accounting software. So yeah, that's top tips to stick to your property development budget. Again, it goes back to what Jack was literally first saying in this podcast, which is about basic financial, basic fundamentals to financial modeling and bookkeeping and accounting. So yeah.
I think it's worth saying, like, this is absolutely gold. And if you haven't taken note of this and are going to adopt it, we've been through 3 different accountants since we've set up our businesses, and I don't think any of them have advised something to this level of detail and organization. So it's super important, and it enables you to really capture everything that you need to. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yep. Cool. So that's certainly a high value task. What?
Yeah, there you go. That is a HVT.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on this because we talked about goals and goal setting last week, and I think it is really important to make sure that beyond the actual goals and everything that you might set up, that we are really, as business owners, carrying forward high value and low value tasks. So I talked about this in the episode a few weeks ago where I talked through Daniel Priestley absolutely drumming this home. But I wanted to give you some examples, and I also wanted to enable you to like extrapolate that into your calendar and make sure that you're taking this forward with your goals in 2025. So high value tasks for a business owner, especially in property, might be investor meetings, appraising sites, hiring and managing staff, problem solving. I think it was Stanford University did an assessment assessing 100 CEOs and what they do with their time, and like 90% of their time is problem solving and firefighting, which is just crazy. You think a CEO would be walking around really organized, know what they're doing every day, but actually they're there to dive in and resolve problems as the Swiss Army knife. As you know, the processes get broken if problems arrive. Business growth is a huge one. So sales, business growth development, meeting people to grow your business, watching something like this, and partnerships. People invest in people, and that's a really, really key one. So there are some in there just for business owners, but hopefully there's some in there also for property people. And examples of low value tasks that you might be doing, and sort of check in with yourself and see if you're doing these. And I do actually become victim to this because you kind of think, by the time I've given it to such and such, it takes me just as long to do it. But if you can do that and they continuously do that particular activity, you could be saving yourself more time than just the time in doing it. So constantly checking emails. I set filters and rules in my email inbox. So some things I don't even get to see. It sort of goes to that area of my inbox, and I know that it's there that if I need to check it, but I don't necessarily need to read it. Data entering, so forms, filling out data on, where you live and blah, 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 get someone in the team to do that if you can. And essentially easy admin. So it's admin that is, easily handed over to someone else and just say, can you just fill this in if you possibly could? Unenjoyable tasks. So this is like, it doesn't necessarily always have to be, because what we're sort of implying here is it's kind of like the simple stuff, but actually some stuff that you might outsource might actually be really complicated, and you just might really be bad at it and someone else might be really good at it. They showed us this, they love charts on the Goldman Sachs course, but they showed us a chart where you have all of your strength areas on a table and a weak area, and they say that you should hire people that overlap your weak area in their strength areas, basically saying their personality is better fit for that particular task than yours. And then another one is literally low value tasks. So I know low value tasks sounds like what it obviously does, what it says on the tin. But if you're, weirdly, I was actually recording Ground Up this morning, and Dorian's driving to Scotland to paint a house today. And that is the epitome of a low value task. The 3-4 hour drive, the decorating while he's there. And he just, I don't know why he's doing it. And he always nags to me about delegation and how I get my hands so dirty with finding deals, and because he's completely hands off in his business. But he's got a team of 50 people in Wales, and he's going up to paint a house in Scotland. So that is a really low value task. And it's not low value because it's super easy. It's not that costly to replace that task being done by someone else, and easily to do so. And then another one is repeating tasks. So think to yourself, what do I recurringly do? And that's one I feel I'm quite good at thinking about for myself. So sometimes I find it easier to do some tasks myself, and that's typically tasks that don't repeat that much. But if there is a task that repeats a lot, think to yourself, how can I outsource that? How can I use AI? How can I bring someone in to do that for me? And think around that. So if you want the most efficient year this year, I always say to anyone when I'm mentoring with deal finding, the most important thing is your own time. And if you get better at managing your own time, you'll just get way more success. And it's not about like finding one good deal. It's kind of like that 1% compounding improvement every day in your own time, really does extrapolate to a much more successful year, 365% improvement over the year. And that's really what you're aiming for.
Yeah, it starts with tracking your time. Jack and I have recently been using Toggle which is a time tracking software that links to your calendar and things like that. So if you don't know where you're spending your time, that's really the first step, because you can't break it down to high value and low value if you don't know what you're doing when. So make sure you're using one of these types of Clockify or Toggle type of softwares to make sure that you understand where your time is currently being spent and where you need to improve it. Cool.
Very good, very nice.
Onto the Q&A. I've not seen some of these. Starting from the left. So I responded to this last night, didn't I? Yeah. I figured out actually on YouTube that there were loads of apologies if you're tuning in. We hadn't responded to you. I just didn't realize that on the community app on YouTube, it doesn't always tell you when a new comment's been made. Unless you have a certain filter on. So I went through last night and actually responded to loads of things that were like 4 months out of date, 6 months out of date. So apologies. But somebody called M896 was sort of commenting on HMOs and basically saying HMOs are pointless. I said, what's wrong with having it? Oh, he said HMOs are pointless unless you manage it yourself. I was like, well, what's wrong with having a managing agent? And he said they get 15% of the gross rent, then you pay the bills, including the mortgage. Waste of time, just go for standard lets. And our view was basically that, that's couldn't disagree more. Vanilla buy-to-lets have their place, but you're not going to get the high yields that we achieve with our HMOs on a buy-to-let. So I do absolutely think that there is time for buy-to-lets, depending on where you're at in your life and what you want and how much freedom you want. But fundamentally, if you're searching for yield, a buy-to-let is not going to get you the yield that HMOs give us. And he said, whatever, quantify that somehow. What is your average room void period between HMOs lets, for example? And I know that Jack's figure within Central Suites is something like 99% void occupancy rate, isn't it? So you've just got like a
we're literally we blend at about 99% ongoing, so it's super high. We do push really hard to fill rooms because I'd rather let it for slightly less and get it filled rather than hold out for the right pricing, because my view is always the same as a hotel room. You have your overheads of 50 quid a night and you need to sell it for £100 a night, and if you sell it for £0 for 7 nights, you've lost 50 quid 7 times over before you've even got the £100. So
I think that's where this guy's coming from, isn't it? But when you're basically having a 3 or 4 day per year void period, you can have that in a buy-to-let as well. I've had that numerous times where it's taken 2 weeks to actually fill the buy-to-let. So I think that's horses for courses. You do you. There's absolutely a place for vanilla buy-to-lets, but that's where you run the figures, right?
I think every deal is different. We've bought buy-to-lets in Central Suites which perform better than some HMOs. We've bought developments which when you refinance work better than some HMOs. It's all on each particular deal. One thing I would say is Stuart Wyeth, who I record the Ground Up podcast with, he has actually agreed I like 7% plus VAT for his HMO management, on the view that he gives them all of their work. So he's got now 50 beds, and he said, I'll stick with you if you give me this rate. So at that rate, you can't really lose. And he probably does get higher voids than we do, and he probably doesn't let for what we do, as in terms of like market competency and rate. But he doesn't have to deal with any of the noise. He just gives them the asset and they manage it. So horses for courses. It depends on the deal.
Nice. Jordan, thanks for your questions. You've got a part 1 and a part 2. What high value task are you most focused on to propel XP to the next level? And then part 2 his question is, has this changed as you've grown? Would you have focused on different things? Do you want to...
I kind of answered part 1 in the last slide where I'm talking about high value tasks, the things that we should be spending our time on. And I suppose it's just really problem solving, growing the business, and working on the business rather than in the business. But you can work in the business if we're working on the business is complete, or as complete as it can be.
I mean, my high value task early on in the process is really optimizing design to make sure we get the highest GDV and lowest build costs, and then analyzing and value engineering the build costs when we get tenders through. I think we've saved hundreds of thousands of pounds through the value engineering process, and we've added hundreds of £1,000s through optimizing the design and working through that. I think my time isn't best spent in the actual delivery of the project, even though there's still huge amounts of value that can be gained from delivering successfully. But fundamentally, that should be my team. That should be pushed to them, and from an operational perspective, the day-to-day delivery should be on them for me to then manage. So that's where my high value tasks are. Has that changed as we've grown? Not really. I think that's always been where I've added value.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I said at the beginning, like, lean into your skills. I think that's really, really key to lean into your skills. My friend who I referred to earlier today, he does the Amazon business. He does all the techie stuff and does all the tech stuff building around it, but he's actually better off not being there and present. He's not very good at managing people. He's very soft-hearted, so they sort of take the piss, and there's not as much, driving them. So I think, the high-value tasks are what you're best at, and orchestrating that within the business.
Yeah, I think looking back, in terms of high-value tasks, or you touched on it earlier, Jack, about not doing things that distract you or whatever. I think the social housing piece for us for the last 4 years has been a massive drain on our time. And it almost was we didn't know anything about the space, but it seemed like a good idea. Whereas in reality, in hindsight, we probably should have just stuck to our lane and not kind of got distracted by that new route. But that's what you live and learn, right? And it could have gone completely differently if Liz Truss has made a few different decisions, and the markets kind of were stable in that area. But those things you can't control. Cool. Another question from Jordan: how is your expansion into London going? Seems very difficult to break in. Absolutely, it is. I think London is so tough. You've got a lot of people with a lot of money that are okay with getting really, really low returns because they're parking their cash. They don't need to generate as big a yield as we might to cover our overheads. So you're constantly outbid on things. Build costs are extortionate. People always put like a London tax on their build costs because it's in London. And more often than not, the site constraints are such that your prelims and your waste disposal, your skip hires, there's just no space. So that just makes everything more difficult from a construction perspective. So our expansion into London isn't going very well from a development perspective, mainly because we haven't found the right deals that stack up for us. Simple as that.
I think if we were based in London, we would have had probably more of an intricate way of looking for sites. We might have done more. I know a lot of people do land assemblies in London because the value is so high, and someone might lose 50 grand's worth of garden but get 300 grand just for that plot, and then it sort of gets assembled. So I know a lot of people have done really well from like land assembly and stuff. So I think if we were there and were walking the streets and purely focusing in London, we just found it a lot easier to secure deals outside London. So that's what we did. And I actually read a stat the other day that apparently more people own real estate in London that are Indian than English now. So it just goes to show, like, you're not competing with, your neighbour or another developer down the road. You're competing with the world because everyone wants to buy real estate in London. So it is a competitive space.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And final question, your objectives for 2025 and how would you plan and measure? I guess that's a good lead on to last week's episode.
Yeah, I literally got it through on my DM, and I was like, we pretty much did that in last week's episode. So
yeah,
Empire Homes Group. Yeah, go and watch
season 2, episode 51 and 52. There's a lot of info on setting 2025 objectives, setting goals, how we do it, how you can do it, and templates that we share for you guys to take away as well. So yeah, go and check that out. Cool. I think that's probably it for this week. Yeah. It's been quite a long episode, but hopefully lots of value for people. Again, if you want any of our templates, drop a comment down below, and we'd love to see you on the webinar on Monday night at 7:30. So click the Zoom link to register your interest for that. But other than that, have a good weekend.
We wish you all a prosperous 2025.
Laters.